it's always a pleasure to come here, whether I'm selling something or just presenting something. But I'm so proud of this facility, and many of you have heard me say this many times, but I look forward to saying this, that this truly is one of the crown jewels of the city of Springdale. Bar none. This is it right here. And I told the developers who are coming in, a couple guys from Texas are going to redevelop the Tri-County Mall, and you're going to hear lots about that today. But I told them when we granted them approval to do that back on December 22nd, I said, so you guys got a high bar to measure up to, but I'm hoping that you too will become another crown jewel of the city of Springdale. So we will wait and see how this materializes. But anyway, Andy Kuchta is our economic development director. He's going to walk you through all this. And I was just telling somebody back there before, these developers approached us late in the summer, around in September, maybe August, and we've had tons of meetings with them, and every day, every week, it seems like there's a new set of challenges. But we've been able to work with the developers. We think we're in a good spot right now. We don't have everything nailed down, but we're still doing our due diligence. They have approached us about moving our community center from down on Longview Avenue to move that over to the new development. It's very enticing. They're willing to build us and I don't want to steal a whole lot of Andy's thunder here, but they're willing to build us a new rec center over there, costing about $35, maybe $40 million for zero, for nothing. That would include 2 indoor pools and all the amenities that we now have down at all the indoor amenities that we have at the existing center. So I think we can hit rocks in the head not to jump on that. Now, it's not going to be totally free. We're going to, over the next 30 years, we'll get to make some payments to help them reduce the debt, but still our total outlay at the end of 30 years is going to be less than $10 million. And all of a sudden, day one, we're going to have a $35, $40 million asset or facility for the people of this city to enjoy. So anyway, Andy will fill in a lot of details about that. But needless to say, we're excited. And in fact, I want to get back to the challenges. Every week there's new challenges. As a matter of fact, just to tell you how complicated this is, last August, he was bushy haired. Look at him now. So I've tried to stay away from it, make sure it doesn't happen to me. I can't afford to lose any hair. He had a lot to lose. But anyway, without further ado, let me introduce Andy Kuchta, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this. Andy?
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here. I'm going to jump right into it. So we can't talk about what's going on in Springdale without talking about the impact of COVID, right? And to give you an idea, in 2019, pre-pandemic, we had about 5,300 people a day commuting to work in the city on any given day. We actually have good data on that. It tracks cell phone data. It's a service that we subscribe to, so it's pretty accurate. And in March of 2020, with the stay-at-home orders, and then every place shut down for a few months, it dropped like a rock, and then it slowly started coming back a little bit. But you can see how it never has recovered through June 30th. We are still at about 3,400 people a day commuting to work inside the city. There's a lot of reasons that we don't think it's really going to recover, at least with the companies that we have here today. We looked at folks that are making $60,000 or more average household income, so we tried to filter out part-time workers and retail employees, probably focus more on office workers because those are the ones that could work remotely the most, and that's the kind of changes that we're seeing. If you look at the overall universe of everybody that would commute to work inside the city on any given day, the overall number is a lot higher, but the bulk of Springdale's earnings tax revenue comes from those office workers. So for us, that's a really important factor to be measuring and keeping track of. So through June 30th, we were down to 3,400 people a day on average coming to work anywhere inside the city, which is about 2,100 people fewer a day on average. And it's not only they're not paying earnings tax to us if they're not working here, they're not eating in our restaurants, or they're not shopping here, they're not using our services. So it's a bigger ripple effect than just the earnings tax revenue to the city that we're looking at. And it's been having a ripple effect Restaurants have been struggling, and other retailers have been struggling since the beginning of the pandemic. So what do we do to turn that around? Part of the issue is a lot of our office buildings that were full are old. They were built in the late 70s through the 80s, and they're all in a big office park. I think it's like due that way, pretty close to here. And a few of them have been empty for a while now. And so how do we address these older office buildings that are probably not going to get refilled, because there's a lot of empty buildings, office buildings throughout Cincinnati, a lot of which are newer than these office buildings. So those newer office buildings are cutting their rent rates to try to attract the few workers that are coming in on any given day, which puts our office buildings that are older in an even tougher position, and it would require a lot more capital investment to be competitive. So we had a couple opportunities presented to us early in the pandemic that changed our thinking as we were seeing the empty office parking lots. We were starting to track this data on how many people were not coming into work every day. And we jumped on one of these first opportunities that I'm going to go through now. Before that, though, the strategy that we developed out of these early opportunities is really focusing on people that work from home, because that's what's happening with a lot of our office workers. Nationally, office occupancy is, as of a week ago, only on average about 40% of what it was in 2019, so it's not just us, it's everywhere. Many companies are offering very flexible work schedules to their employees. It depends on the job, depends on the company, but a lot of our companies have gone very, very flexible, up to including 4 days a week work from home. So if a lot of these people are now working from home, that's going to help us in a couple of ways. It's going to help us hopefully replace at least part of those lost earning taxes, because the workers are no longer coming here, and they're working out of their homes. But they're also going to dine here because they're living here more often, shop here, and use services here. So it's going to help backfill a whole bunch of needs that we have due to the 2,000 fewer people a day that are coming here. The only way we can do that, though, is through density. In case you're not familiar with Springdale, we're kind of out of land. We've been built out for a very long time. So we can't get density on redevelopment of, say, an empty office building or an empty retail store. Can't get the density that we really need with single-family homes. So we're focusing right now on what is very hot in the market and where there's a lot of demand, which is apartments. So the projects that I'm going to go through now real quickly, that should be all under construction by the end of this year, but some of them are under construction already, are going to bring over the next 2-3 years about 900 new multifamily units to the city. First new apartments in 30 years. Okay, Mallard Lakes up at across from the Showcase Cinema, around 4. Those have been our newest apartments. They're about 30 years old, and they're doing great. I got on their website yesterday, and there were only 3 units that were going to be open in August. Everything else is all filled up, and the starting monthly rents that were advertised were $1,700 a month for 2-bedroom, 2-bath units in a 30-year-old apartment building. So they're doing well. Anecdotally, the city doesn't get very few complaints in terms of crime or anything like that. So it's a really good addition. Well-run, well-kept apartments are a real asset to the city, and we're going to go from there and hopefully build on it. So the first project I want to talk about is very close to here. So that yellow and red dot or star is where we are. This is where we are right now. So it's kind of due northeast. It's less than a mile as the crow flies, but you'd have to get on Route 4 and go on Northland Boulevard and then go on Merchant Street to get there. So it's about 1.5 miles by car. But it is in the heart of our old office area. And these 2 office buildings were built in 1981. You can see them, the pictures of them on the right. They look the same. They were built at the same time together. And you can see on the screen, they're kind of outlined in orange. They're 3 stories each, 89,000 square feet. They were built for GE Aviation. GE occupied those buildings until 2008, when they left to go into newer office buildings over in Westchester off of Union Center Boulevard. Those buildings were vacant since 2008 after GE left. They could not attract new tenants. They were no longer Class A. They were kind of older, didn't have the amenities that newer Class A office users wanted. And they did not have enough parking to accommodate the kind of office users that would go there, like a call center or back office operations that need more parking because they cram people in the cubicles. Well, all that's now changed too, thanks to COVID. But anyways, those buildings were empty since 2008, and a developer came to us a couple months after the pandemic started, a Cincinnati developer, and he said, hey, I have a proposal for you, city. How about I turn those 2 office buildings into apartment units and build a bunch of rental townhouses in the parking lot areas around those office buildings. When he described it initially, we could not picture it. We thought he was crazy. But then we worked with him a little bit and came up with some designs that we thought were good. He got approved by our planning commission to do this project, and it's actually under construction today. So on the left side of the screen, you see one of the office buildings. There's not a whole lot of changes you can make to the outside of that office building. They're going to cut some balconies in a part of it and change some of the painting here and there to break up those long horizontal lines of concrete and glass. But each of those office buildings is going to have about 66 apartment units. And then you see on the right side of the screen the back side of some of the rental townhouses. They're going to be 3 stories tall, so just about as tall as the office buildings. They're going to have 2-car garages on the back side underneath, and then you come in through the front door at the ground level, and there's a mudroom, and you can go up some stairs, and there's 2 full floors of living above. Each of those units, there's going to be 97 of them around the whole parking lot area. Each of those units is going to have 3 bedrooms. The project is called The Row on Merchant because of where it's at, Merchant Street, 135 and 144 Merchant Street, I believe. And there's another view of those townhouses. You kind of see the front side of those townhouses, and there's a couple different color schemes. We worked with them to come up with a contemporary design that would blend in well with the other office buildings. This is probably a little more urban than Springdale's used to. It's maybe something you would see in a bigger city, but we thought it would be a better fit in the rest of this office park and not stand out if they look more like a suburban residential apartment complex. So there's going to be 97 of those townhouses. The first block of townhouses is going to be available for rent in September, so just a few months away. And the first office building apartments are going to be available early next year. So they bought it late last year, and they've been working on it since January. And there is the overall site plan. If you're looking at it from the sky, obviously the 2 larger white boxes are the office buildings, and then you see the smaller ones that are those townhouses kind of grouped around. There's going to be a central green space area. They're building in a little new internal roadway. They're going to have a rooftop gathering area on one of the office buildings for the tenants there. There's going to be your traditional kind of amenities that are now expected in these office buildings as far as package delivery rooms, co-working space, that kind of thing. And the apartments in the office building in particular are expected to have a lot of nice tech features, so voice-enabled thermostats and electronic locks at your front doors, all kinds of technology, and they're going to be larger than modern, normal apartment units, so they're going to have built-in workspace as well for the work-from-home crowd. So we're really hopeful that this is going to appeal to folks that have adapted to working from home a lot, and they're looking for an apartment maybe that can really accommodate that better than where they live now. And there is a picture that I took about a week and a half ago of the project under construction right now. So on the right-hand side, you see the framed in and now wrapped in insulation with windows, the townhouses on the right, and then you see the one of the office buildings closer on the left, and then the other office building far behind. Those townhouses that are kind of ringed, those office buildings are so tall you're not going to be able to see most of the office buildings from the road. So very excited about this. It's about a $39–40 million investment, and we think it's going to be a good addition. It's going to have 229 total units, and it should officially be the first new apartments available in the city in 30 years. Any questions on this project? Yes, ma'am.
For the office building, are they going to do them more loft style, which allows some flexibility for the people that move in to decide on walls and stuff?
They're building. The question is for the office buildings, or for the people that are going to watch this on video later. Are they doing the office building apartments as loft style? I think that they are going to be, there may be a few loft style, but they're going to be basically large, long, conventional apartment units. They've got 3 floors that they have to build on. So there may be here and there based on the interior layout where they do a few of those, but it's going to be, I think, mostly a conventional 2-bedroom, maybe a few 3-bedroom units.
I'm thinking more in terms of the 1 floor plan, not the 2. Because of so many people wanting that open socializing space.
Yeah. To expand on the concept, there will be some kind of common gathering areas inside the office buildings, and you think about it when you walk in the main entrance of an office building, there's kind of a lobby area that has the elevators leading off to it, and there are conference rooms usually on each floor. So I think they're building some gathering space throughout each office building for the tenants there. We don't. The building department has the floor plan details, but I haven't seen every single kind of floor plan myself for that. Any other questions on this project before we move on? Okay. So our next project that we started talking to by the end of 2020, after the pandemic started, was the former Sheraton Hotel site. For those of you not familiar with it, it is just a little ways up the road on Route 4, across from the Showcase Cinema. And it is about 8.3 acres. It was the home of a 10-story hotel for many years that ended up closing also in 2008. That was not a great year for the city. And it was vacant ever since then. The city purchased the property in 2015, tore the hotel down the next year, put up a for sale sign, and this is the first user that had a serious interest and actually gave us an offer on the property. The developer is an Indianapolis-based developer of apartment communities called Millhouse. They do really nice work. And the city sold the property to them at the beginning of this year for $2.1 million, I believe. The project is going to be a more conventional type of apartment project that you would see in a suburban area. And it's going to be multiple buildings. It's going to have a clubhouse and a pool. It's going to have a mini dog park. It's going to have a coffee bar, a yoga studio, package room. It's going to have some co-working space, so if you need to get out of your apartment for a few hours because you have some meetings you have to do over the internet, and you've got a barking dog in your apartment, you'll be able to reserve some space within the apartment complex and go do that. It has outdoor fire pit area as well, so this is just a different option, a different choice for those folks that want that, and they're under construction right now as well. That's a picture I took about a week and a half ago, so that's a clubhouse. So if you would happen to drive north on Route 4, you'll see that on your left, just after you cross into Route 275. It's a little further along than this picture today, but they expect to have the first units available for rent first quarter of next year as well. And that project is called The Array in Springdale. Any questions on that project? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I've lived in this area a long time, and there was a fishing lake there, and that's why the hotel went to pop. That's why I'm wondering why you're building it.
Well, I'm not familiar with the question was about the fishing lake and the negative impact it had on the hotel. That water body, I think it's called Springdale Lake on the map, is actually stormwater retention area for Mallard Lakes Apartments and for all the properties along Sheridan Lane. You have to have somewhere for all the stormwater to run to and kind of sit before it can filter out into the natural groundwater system. And that's what that body of water does. So yes, it has to be there, and hopefully, I know that the folks that are developing that apartment are very interested in having a little path maybe that goes out to the edge of it, so the residents there can go out and sit and enjoy the water. I'm sure they're going to have to do something to keep the Canadian geese off their property as much as they can. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is rental more popular than condo and purchasing as a condo community?
So right now the market has been very, very much in favor of apartments. And with the way the interest rates have gone up just in the past few months, and they're expected to keep going up probably for the next few years, it's making it even harder for buyers to put down payments on a home or a condo. So we actually talked to another developer for another small site in Springdale just a week or two ago, and I asked them if they would consider a condo development on that site instead of apartments, which is what they wanted to do. And they went and talked to their lender about it, and they came back and they said, we don't think our lender is would lend us the money for that, because they're concerned, number one, about a recession in general, but then number two, about the interest rates really depressing people looking to purchase condos. So to answer your question, right now, and probably for at least the next, I would say 3 to 5 years, there's going to be very little appetite for condos in the market. Okay, the big thing everybody really wants to know about Tri-County Mall, which will now be called Artisan Village. That's the name the new owners came up with. The short story on that name is they're tying it back to the early settlement days of Springdale, where people here made horseshoes and pottery and blue glass, and everybody made stuff by hand, and everything was local. And that's kind of they're trying to tie it back to that concept, and also I think they're also kind of making the imagery look a little more upscale. So when you think about artisan cheeses and artisan breads, you think small batch, fancy, handcrafted foods and goods. So I think that's the other angle that they're taking with it. So Artisan Village it is. A lot of people are calling it artesian, which it's not well watered. It's fancy small batch. This is one of the renderings of an existing chunk of the mall. I'm not going to try to explain it. We've got a lot more to look at, so I'm just going to go through with more pictures. So that's the actual official branding. So you see they have kind of a fancy script writing. They show it on a proposed building as well. And they have a website if you want to go look at it. There's not a whole lot there right now, artisanvillageohio.com. But you can sign up to get updates on the project as it progresses. So this is a very busy map, and it's looking top down at the Tri-County Mall site. I-275 is on the left side of the screen. The rail line is going diagonally up that way. 747 Preston Pike is on the bottom, and Temple Road is going up the right side of the screen. So that large gray block is the parking garage behind Macy's, and the big white box in front of it is Macy's box. Trying to orient everybody to what they're looking at. And then that large gray box kind of at the top in the middle, that's the very large parking structure that's behind Dillard's and Sears. And then catty corner to the right of that is a large white box, and that's the Dillard's as well. They intend to keep at least 80% of the existing structures. And by that, I mean the framing, the foundations, the slabs, but they're going to totally rip off the outside faces, the brick, the glass, and do all new outside of these buildings. So it won't look anything like it does today when they're done with it. The only building they intend to totally tear down, large building, is the Sears box, because it's falling apart, and it has some asbestos in it, I believe, so they want to get rid of that one. And probably a few smaller outbuildings. The Sears tire store, that's way on the east side of the property at Kemper Road, that's probably going to go as well. The green area that you see in the middle, down at the bottom here, that's a central plaza, and that's going to be kind of the main gathering area for the whole community. It's going to have on the left side a co-working office with a microbrewery attached to it, and in the very front of it, where's my pointer? Okay, did everybody see my pointer? Right there is a permanent outdoor stage with some permanent outdoor seating. So a variety of concerts and performance events can happen throughout the year in that main plaza. And then the rest of that area is the main plaza. They have another outdoor restaurant planned right there that's going to have great views of the main plaza. And this is, I have to look at my screen while I'm doing this, otherwise the mouse goes everywhere. This is the main section of the mall right now between the Macy's and BJ's Brew House. So it is one continuous building today. And they're going to separate the Macy's from that main middle section, and they're going to separate it from BJ's, and they're going to open it up. So, and they're going to convert what are 2 stories of retail now to 3 levels of apartments. And on the ground floor, facing that main plaza, if you follow the mouse down there, they're going to have restaurants and maybe some stores that are going to have outdoor seating and facing that main public plaza area. Meat Gossamel's is currently here, right next to Macy's on the left side. BJ's is over here on the right side, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's going to go on that I'll kind of dive into a little more. But I just wanted to give you the big overview on how the site lays out. So this is the overall current full build-out plan. If they would actually build everything they show on here, which includes a bunch of 10-story buildings, they would actually build about 4 million square feet worth of stuff, buildings. To give you perspective, the mall is 1.3 million square feet. It's 4 point something million. So it's literally building like another 2 malls on top of the existing one. That's how much building would be there. So it's very dense, and it needs to be dense to have the right amount of people living there, working there, shopping there, to make everything successful and make it vibrant. So this map shows what they plan currently to build in the first phase. So a few buildings kind of disappeared from that first map, mostly on the right, upper right corner, and then left corner on top. So everything in that yellow line is what they plan to build up front. So the developers have a really big challenge. Okay, they have to put in all the roads, all the new water lines and sewer lines. They have to rerun all the electric within the property, which right now, that cost estimate is about $19 million just for new electric lines, okay? They have to build a 1-mile hike bike path that goes around the whole site. They have to build a 3 or 4 acre dog park, which is down on the left side of the map, between the I-275 and the Macy's in this picture. So they have $350 to $450 million worth of stuff to build in that first phase, and a lot of it will not generate revenue for them. The roads are not going to generate revenue, the park is not going to generate revenue, the bike path is not going to generate revenue, but all that stuff has to be there because they're also building in this first phase the first 450 apartments. And if somebody's going to consider living there, when they show up on day one, they've got to look around and see that this is a nice place that they want to live. Oh, there's this nice new bike path around here, there's the dog park, there's all this cool stuff going on in this beautiful plaza. So they have to build up the entire site infrastructure at the beginning. So they're facing a real challenge with that, and I'm confident that they're going to get the financing for it. But every day it's getting harder because of interest rates going up, and it's also impacting their financing a little bit, not as much as it would you or I trying to get a new home. All right, so I'm zooming in a little bit on that map to show what is in the main plaza area. So to give you a sense for where you're looking at today, this is where the Outback restaurant is, where I'm pointing on the left there. And then if I move over to the right, you see Starbucks, Men's Warehouse, and Chipotle. So those two buildings are absolutely going to stay where they're at. This is the middle entrance to the site today. There's 3 entrances along Preston Pike. When they drew this drawing, they were considering closing off that main entrance into the site because they need to build probably a 3-story parking garage between Outback and Starbucks. Because they're going to tear up half of the parking lots for Outback and Starbucks by creating that new park. And Outback and Starbucks and Chipotle all had veto rights to tearing up half of their parking lot. So the developers, they've run into many unexpected issues with developing such a complex property. And the solution they came up with was, hey guys, we'll build you 3 stories of parking, covered parking, where the people can walk right out and walk over to your place of business. It's actually going to be closer, it's not going to be open to the elements. What do you say? And I believe they have agreement from all those tenants, and they don't want to just have a 3-story parking garage right there. So they're going to put their first hotel on top of that garage. So they're looking at a 120-room hotel. So I think it's 4 stories. So they're looking at about a 7-story building right there next to Princeton Pike. That's the plans today. Those plans can still change before they would come in for final building permits. In fact, they've changed already. They're now thinking of maybe keeping that entrance, but only having 1 lane in and out versus like 3 lanes out and 3 lanes in. And that can all be done and have it go through a parking garage, and it could still work. And you see a little bit more close up. This is kind of that main mall area right now near the top where my mouse is. That if you walk in the main entrance behind Chipotle and Outback, and you would go in the main entrance and look to the left or right, you would be looking down towards Macy's or BJ's, and it's 2 long hallways with 2 floors of retail. That's that area that they're going to convert to apartments, and then facing that main plaza, they're going to have restaurants and other stores that are going to be facing that plaza. Yes, ma'am, you had a question?
The parking and the parking garage, are they going to work it like they did in Dublin, Ohio on Bridge Street so that all the indoor parking is free?
Yes, the plan is to have even more parking than we have now. So the intent is to keep the 2 big existing parking structures, and just about every building that they're going to build from the ground up is going to have some integrated levels of parking so that anybody that's living, most of those buildings are going to have some amount of apartments. And they want all the people that live in those apartments to be able to park in their own building and not have to walk even a couple blocks because they had to park somewhere else.
Right, but for somebody that wants to go to Outback, they could drive in, park in that garage, and not have to pay.
Yes, I mean, I assume there will be some amount of spots in that garage reserved for hotel guests, but the idea of doing that garage is to provide free parking for people that want to go to Outback or Chipotle or Men's Warehouse or Starbucks. So yeah, they're
And also to cost to go to an event at that outdoor auditorium.
Yes, they'll be able to park and go to anywhere they want in those free spots in that garage or the other garages that are going to be built throughout the whole property. So, like I said, similar to Bridge Park, I've been to Bridge Park. They have, it seems like every 3rd building has 3 floors or so of parking, free parking. That's kind of the model they're looking at doing here as well. Like, so, for example, this main section of the mall, and I'll move my map up a little bit. So that's that main section of the mall right now that goes between Macy's on the left and BJ's on the right. The back side along this new road that's going to be built, that's between the Dillard store and that main hallway, they're going to have parking entrances in underneath those buildings now for the residents that are going to live there. So that's just another way that they're adding parking into existing buildings. You see they have a music venue planned right next to BJ's. They have 2 or 3 stories to work with. Over here you see on the top right labeled grocery and food hall. So they're going to reserve about a 35,000 square foot ground level space for a grocery store. Probably not a Kroger, because Kroger wants to do bigger stores than that, but it could be a Whole Foods, it could be a Trader Joe's, it could be a Publix moving up into this part of the country. So I think there's some good options for grocery to come to this site. And then you see the Dillard's building at the top of the screen, and you see a labeled community center. So I'm going to take you to another picture here. So this is what they call a massing plan. I call it a Lego block plan, but it's to give an idea of how many stories, how high buildings are. It's like very early stage kind of concepts that the architects put together. So if you look at the right, you see a hotel labeled there, sitting on top of the parking garage. So Princeton Pike is way off on the right-hand side. You see Outback labeled there to kind of help you orient what you're looking at. And then behind the hotel is that main green plaza area. and then what's currently the main mall area today. And you can see that half-round skylight with a strip of skylights running down the middle that's there today now. They actually plan to keep those skylights. It's really interesting. They're going to open up all those entrances to that main section of the mall. On either end, if you were walking towards the mall from the parking lot today, they're going to open that up to the elements. And even the skylights, they're going to open up the ceiling on either side of the skylights. What's going to happen is, here's where you're standing underneath that half-round skylight, looking at Dillard's way at the back, kind of lower right there. If you can see my mouse on the screen, that's the Dillard's store today. And that's that half-round skylight that is there today. They would like to keep that as kind of an architectural feature. So you're going to have these cool girders coming down in the glass. And if you turn to the left on that screen, that's the hallway that would take you back towards Macy's. Except now it's going to be this boulevard with apartments on either side. And they're going to have little pocket parks, benches. They're going to have trees growing in there because it's going to be open to the elements. A little protected in the middle with that glass, but you're still going to get rain and sun and wind and everything in there. But it's if it works out, it's going to be a really neat and different kind of a feel for that part of the development, and a really nice reuse of some of the existing structures that I think people are going to really appreciate. If you go forward under that glass, you walk towards Dillard's. So the Dillard's building is these 3 floors of glass. And then above behind it, you see those kind of little brown rows. That's an apartment building that they have planned out for behind the Dillard's, maybe coming off of a large parking structure, actually overbuilding on top of that. I don't know if that's going to end up working out, but the Dillard's has 3 floors, 80,000 square feet each is each floor of the Dillard's. The city's been talking to them for months now about relocating our community center there, as Mayor Webster mentioned to you. We're still talking to them. There's some unexpected issues that came up with the financial structure. It's a very complicated situation. So we're trying to work through with them what we think will be a good deal for them and for us and the citizens of the city. We're very hopeful that we can work it out. And we think it makes a lot of sense to have it there. I will tell you that right now that we are focusing on a scenario where the city would actually own that space and not just lease it. It's very important to a lot of people in the city administration, the city council, that we just don't lease such an important space, and that we actually have a lot more control over by owning it. So one of the concepts is they kind of convert that building into a condo, and they condo out the first floor, and they deed that over to the city. And that gives us a lot of ownership control and a lot more protection in the future if things would ever go bad. So, we're really leaning towards that very strongly right now, and they seem to be positive about that. We're hopeful that we're going to have some more details in the next couple of months on how this could all work and what it means to the city. But for now, it's a very positive opportunity, not only to keep and grow and improve what we have with our current community center, but then open up a whole bunch of opportunities at our existing community center location for redevelopment of that property. And there's a whole host of things that we're going to be looking at if we get to that point for that building. It could be everything from maybe moving a couple other city departments into that building and reusing that and upgrading that space, saving money by going from maybe 2 buildings into 1, and then being able to dispose of maybe some other older buildings that also have some issues. Or the other end of the range of options includes even tearing that building down and creating more park amenities at that location. Everything from covered picnic areas to splash pads. That's like a really big thing that a lot of families are looking for these days, and that are going up in a lot of other communities. And having it be a really premier outdoor gathering space, because all the fields are still going to be there, the walking area around the park there is still going to be there. The outdoor pool is going to be there for a little while. We don't, it's got some challenges. It's got some capital investment needs that are pretty big. So, but there's options there for eventually a outdoor pool, and have an outdoor aquatic center at that location if we have the funding in the future. So, moving the community center over to this project could have a lot of positive outcomes for the city, and we're hopeful that we're going to get there. we're only going to be recommending, I think, as an administration, what we think is a win-win for everybody. So that's about all I can say about where it's at right now. It's still a work in progress. Here's another rendering of that main plaza area. So the grassy area is on your left, and those 3 levels of apartments with that ground floor retail restaurant is on your right. I just give you an idea of there's going to be a lot of space to walk around, even though there's going to be a lot of tall buildings. And the idea is there's always going to be something going on, because there's going to be the permanent stage in the main plaza. They want to get, for sure, at least one restaurant that has an outdoor stage incorporated into their restaurant. So that restaurant will also have concerts. But there may be others as well. There may be an indoor entertainment venue that will have music acts and other kinds of entertainment. So there's really a whole bunch of possibilities for what can happen on that site. But if you just want to go there and walk or bike around that mile-long path, which we hope is going to connect to other improved bike paths throughout the city, that's going to be an option too. Or you'll be able to take your dog to the dog park. So this is the latest trend in dog parks. They take construction trailers and convert them into little buildings. I don't know what the building on the left is. It looks like it has little couches inside. The one across the top I think is just a sign, but the one on the right is a restaurant. So the idea is you bring your dog into this enclosed dog park area, let your dog run around and make some new friends, and you can go to that little restaurant, get yourself hamburger, beer, hot dogs, whatever they sell. And they will sell alcohol, and you can hang out and you can make some new friends too. We've been told that this concept is very popular in other parts of the country, including Texas, and it's a major pickup area for singles to go and meet others. So the developers are really excited about this. Okay, so getting back to that big Lego block plan, just to give you another sense of the scale of what they're looking at to build there. Like I said, up to 10-story buildings. So you have Princeton Pike on the left-hand side. You can see that parking garage where the mouse is with the hotel above it. And then you come up towards Kemper. They potentially could do a 10-story building right at the corner of Kemper and Princeton Pike, which would have retail or something on the ground floor, and then probably apartments above it. We're really working with them to get some office space worked into some of these buildings, because this is the kind of location that office users want to go in. They want to go to exciting places where there's a lot going on, where their employees are going to have things to do outside of the office for those days that they do come into the office. So they originally weren't thinking of that, and they didn't want to steal our existing office users, and we've told them we'd rather have our existing office employers relocate to here than just leave the city altogether, because there's no good option. So I think they've changed their attitude on that, and expect to see more offices worked into some of these buildings over time. So one thing that we know that we're going to have to do to attract the active empty nesters, that we expect this is going to be pretty popular with a lot of active empty nesters. Spring Rose Meadows, that single family home subdivision that I think is all built out now, about 50 homes at the corner of Route 4 and Princeton Pike. I've seen a lot of the homeowners there, and I've been surprised at how many older residents there are with grown, they don't have any kids in that house, the kids are grown and gone, but they wanted a newer modern house to maybe move up into, but they already lived around here somewhere in a smaller, older house with more modern amenities, maybe a smaller yard. They didn't have to take care of as much yard. And so there's a pretty high proportion of those folks that are living in Spring Rose Meadows that are active empty nesters. I expect we're going to have a lot of that here too. And to attract those folks that are still out there walking and biking and doing stuff, and then the younger generation that is definitely, they're more active, especially if they're looking to move into some place like this, they're going to want to be able to walk and bike around the city potentially. So we have been working with a design firm called KZF for the past 3 months, and hope by this September, just a few months away, to have a master plan for bike and pedestrian connectivity for the whole city. That's not only going to connect Artisan Village, which you see is up here on the right, but that former Sheraton Hotel site, that's up here on the left, that star over there. and then down to the Merchant Street offices that are getting converted over here. That star is going to connect all those folks to where most of our single-family residential is, which is here on the west side of that map, below 275, and even beyond. Connecting across 275 someday to Heritage Hill, up on the right side of that map, and then to the neighborhoods that we have up on the left, north side of 275 on the left side of that map as well. And then eventually getting down to regional bike trails as well. So probably down Route 4 is probably going to be the most likely path that it would go. So you would see some improvement right out here. Going all the way down to the Whitten Woods Glenwood Gardens connector, which has been fully funded and it's going to be under construction 2025 through 27. And those trails that you see kind of in dark colors there, you can get on those and I believe get all the way down to Cincinnati and the regional trail network. There's a regional effort to what they call the Crown, where they're wanting to connect just about every community within Hamilton County by bike trails, and we are hopefully going to now be officially plugged into that plan. So obviously there's a lot of funding issues that we have to work through, a lot of challenges of how do you fit bike paths and or increase sidewalks on really built out areas like around the mall. And so it's not going to be easy. It's going to be expensive, really expensive in some parts, so it's going to take time. But hopefully the new revenue coming off of this new development is going to help us pay for that over a long period of time. So that is really my summary of where we're at today. A final note on the mall redevelopment, Artisan Village. So they hope to have initial demolition happening in some parts of the mall, so separating some of those buildings, taking down the Sears building. They hope to get started on that within the next couple of months. Should see within the next month or so a big construction fence going up around chunks of the mall that's going to have all kinds of nice graphics of people eating and dining and doing active things and enjoying life, and trying to get everybody excited for what's coming. But you're going to see demolition starting, and that's what's going to happen throughout all winter and probably through the first quarter of next year. And then they're going to start building the new infrastructure. So it's going to look muddy and ugly and messy, but it'll take shape. The first phase of the project, which is that kind of that long strip between Macy's and Dillard's, including rebuilding the Dillard's potentially and getting us and a couple other tenants in there, and some of the stuff out front. That should be opening in the first half of 2024. So it's a big project. It's going to take a long time to get to that first phase, but hopefully we'll be back to give you updates over time. So I'd be happy to answer more questions. I see some hands. Ma'am, I'll start with you in front.
The developer is going to have, that's private land. Right.
Yes, it's private land.
Okay, except if you do that condo thing. So will the the Springdale police be monitoring that area, or will they have their own private security?
We expect that they will have their own private security, and they're going to have to determine what exactly that needs to look like, what the staffing needs to look like. They are going to have a close partnership with the city police department. That's going to become part of a regular beat for some Springdale police officers, but it's going to be another beat. It's not like we're going to have to reorganize an entire police department to service that property. It's going to be a team effort, but they're going to have to fund their portion of it.
Because it does seem like a village within a village.
Oh yes, yeah. Up to 2,500 units have been approved. They're expecting right now 2,300 at full build out, given what's going on in the market. But that's going to change over time. Yes, sir.
Is the developer expecting many families with children to be living in the village?
So I will say the question is the developer expecting many families with children? It's really going to depend on their mix of units and how many 3-bedroom units they have, which we don't really have those details yet on the first set of apartment buildings, how many of those are going to be 1 or 2 or 3-bedroom units. The 3-bedroom units are obviously going to be the ones most likely to have kids. To give you the best example I can, I've talked to multiple developers who develop apartments or mixed use in the last 2 years. And traditionally, it's at most 10% of the units have any kids, and usually it's below 5%. And I believe somebody brought up Bridge Park up in Dublin, northern Columbus. So I know the developers who did Bridge Park, and I actually went up there for a conference last October. And at that time, Bridge Park, it's kind of a ground up, brand new mixed-use development, and it's very, very, very dense. Bunch of 5-story buildings crammed onto 25 acres, and they still weren't done building. They had 525 units as of last October of apartments built on that site. Ground floor retail and restaurants. Every other building would have 3 levels of parking in it, and it was all crammed on like 2 long streets that were 6 blocks long each. I was having coffee with one of the vice presidents of the company who developed that whole site one morning, and I asked him about the kid issue. How many kids? And he says, well, Andy, we're 100% leased, 525 units, all occupied, and we have a total of 28 kids in those 525 units, only 8 of which actually go to the local public school. Because some of the kids, it's in a split household, so they go to wherever mom or dad lives, to that school. Some of them go to private school, who knows. And it was funny because just as we got done talking about it, we were at this little coffee shop on the ground level, and the corner of the street right out the window that we were at, a school bus comes up. And he and I both counted, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 kids got on that bus. So traditionally it's a very low count of kids that go into these kinds of apartments. Yes, ma'am.
Was there any thought given to partner with local healthcare systems to create a medical office building with ancillary services on the site?
Question is about partnering with local healthcare system and create a medical office building and ancillary healthcare services on the site. We haven't specifically talked about that, but we would love that because we know we need, it would be nice to have that amenity here. So I don't think that is off the table at all. Part of the issue is where we are. We've been kind of ringed with a lot of large healthcare developments in the past 5, 10, 15 years with the big Mercy Health Complex not too far to our west. There's a lot of medical that's gone in Westchester as well. So they do their own market research and they determine where they're going to go. And once they go there, they kind of focus on a certain area that they're going to serve. So we may be kind of totally surrounded right now by major healthcare, but I think there's probably always opportunity for specialty healthcare options for us. Wait on it.
So what do you guys anticipate a lot more traffic on 747 and Comfort Road? Like, is there going to be different traffic patterns with all this new building?
Question is about traffic. More or less different. The answer is different. You're going to have people that are going to be obviously there at 6 a.m. Some of them will leave to go work somewhere else at 6 a.m. so the traffic going out. I think it's going to be more dispersed throughout the day because there's definitely going to be less retail on the site. You're never going to have the Black Friday traffic jams going into that property like you did when the mall was at full capacity in its heyday. There's absolutely no expectation that's going to happen. So the current rough estimate traffic projections think that the road capacity in that area is absolutely adequate, if not too much, to meet the needs of that site as it builds out. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, how is this going to affect the fire department? You're bringing in more residents, building more buildings and taller ones than a residential home. Are there plans for that?
The question is, how does this affect the fire department? So bringing in more residents, taller buildings, and the residential home. So we already have a 9-story building in Springdale with Victoria Tower. And if I'm not mistaken, and the mayor will tell me if I am mistaken, our tallest ladder truck does not reach higher than 6 stories. Most ladder trucks do not go higher than 6 stories. Probably in New York and in Chicago, when they have really tall buildings, you might have some that go higher. But most buildings that go above 6 stories have to be designed, when it comes to fire and life safety, to basically have in the stairwells these kind of built-in hose systems that, so if something is on fire on the 7th, 8th, 10th floor, the fireman can get into the building and go up there and hook up a hose to an existing water system and fight the fire from within the building. That's standard practice. None of the departments around here, Blue Ash included, have the capability of going above 6 floors, is my understanding. So, from that standpoint, we can serve the buildings, period. The other aspect of it is that this development is going to generate revenue for the city. So the city is using a very complicated tax tool called tax increment financing that we put on the site. And it redirects all the property taxes into a special fund. The school district negotiated with us, and they're getting a very nice payment annually for it. They're getting about 41% of what they would normally get if there was no taxes, no tax monkey business happening on the site. The developer then gets the ability to issue debt towards phases of construction on the TIF revenue stream that's left. The city gets a portion of that TIF revenue every year. I've seen projections all over the place because they're still kind of narrowing down that first phase and what those values of those buildings could realistically be. But we've seen projections, the lowest projection I've seen just for the first phase of construction, the city would be getting $39, $40 million plus over 30 years off that first phase. So, and the projections go a lot higher than that too. It just depends on what they're actually going to be valued at. And one of the things that the city can spend those dollars on is any kind of capital equipment needed to service that property, which would include fire trucks, ambulances, police cruisers, that kind of thing. So it's really going to help us do some changes to our budgeting as we move forward, because those things typically are budgeted just from our general fund, our general revenue. We have to set aside the money to buy an ambulance every X amount of years, and they're getting more expensive. We have to set aside the money to buy X amount of cruisers every year or two. And that can now come out of our general fund and free up some general fund dollars to, if we have to, get to the point where we have to hire another fire crew or police officers. We'll have more money freed up in our general fund for that. So that this tool is really crucial in having this development make sense for the city financially. Yes, sir?
In an earlier presentation, there was some discussion of the school district having some STEM classrooms in one of the buildings.
Oh, I was hoping nobody would remember. So in the second floor of the Dillard's building, there was an early discussion and planning about Princeton schools putting a STEAM institute in that building: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. There's various reasons why the school changed course on that. One of which was some of the financial terms that we all kind of discovered, halfway through the discussion process. We were negotiating with the developer. The schools were having their own negotiations with the developer. We think we have a solution for our financial issues. The school district did not. They did not have a path forward on that. So that was probably the biggest reason why they kind of backed out, but they backed out. So that's not happening anymore. And now the developer is looking at a kitchen incubator going into the second floor. And it's going to help food entrepreneurs learn how to scale up and run a business. So you're talking people that would run a restaurant or a catering business or even get into food production. They would be clients of a food incubator there, and they would actually then have access off of that second floor. They're gonna keep a connection to the old mall where the food court is, and that food court is going to be a food hall. And a food hall, for those of you that don't know, is just what they call a food court today. They try to make them look a little fancier. You tend to have less chain restaurants in food courts and more local restaurants that are kind of unique. That's what we're going to have on the second floor, right next to that kitchen incubator. They're very far along with discussions with that incubator. They're very excited about it, and that could spin off some new restaurants right from that would end up opening up business either on that site somewhere or somewhere else in Springdale if they really enjoy being in the community. So that's what's going to be on the second floor right now. That's the plan. Right now there's no plan for the third floor. I'm hoping they get an office easier to go in the third floor. Well, you might as well ask a crystal 8-ball, your magic 8-ball on time for completion on the whole thing. Right now, they're estimating 10 years-ish, give or take a few years. If things go really well and we don't go into a major recession and there's a lot of demand and people are happy and everything's leasing up, this thing could get built out in 7 years. If we have recessions and things slow down and there's bumps, we're on the longer side of that.
What about, things are getting so hard to get? All that stuff.
Question is about supply chain and how that's impacting them. I think that's eased up for construction materials in the past 6 months. The 2 apartment projects that I showed you that are under construction, they're under construction. So they were held up for a little while with getting lumber ordered and getting steel and glass and whatnot ordered. But I think that eased up a little bit, and now both those projects are cranking on all gears, and they are expecting to be on time with their original estimates. Yes, ma'am.
With this increase in population, I'm wondering about grocery shopping.
Well,
Increasing grocery stores.
Yeah, so
You mentioned growers.
the question is about grocery. So on the second floor of that Dillard's, I just talked about that food incubator, and then going out into the old mall that's still going to be attached to the same building is going to be the food hall or the old food court, and the space right below that is what they are reserving for a grocery store. They don't think it's probably going to be something they could do immediately in the first phase. Grocery operators are probably going to want to see 400 some apartments filled up. They're going to want to see how the vitality of that whole development and see that it's successful. They're thinking by the second phase they should be able to get a grocery store into that space. And again, probably not a Kroger, because Kroger doesn't seem to want to do small store formats anymore. They just want to do large marketplaces. They're probably looking at a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's size kind of user in there. Yes, sir.
Another crystal ball question.
Yes.
How far in the future might we be able to see that bike path connector from here through Glendale to Glenwood Gardens?
The answer is a little foggy. We're just now, trying to really home in on what the plan looks like, what the phases are, and what do we do first. And right now, what seems to be coming into shape, this could change by the time it's adopted by council, hopefully in September, is kind of first phase is going to be figuring out the connection across Princeton Pike to the site, and then improving what are existing sidewalks along Kemper Road, heading towards Northland Boulevard, heading west towards Northland Boulevard, and then keep going west towards Terrace and Longview Avenue. And so, and then doing a 8-foot wide, potentially sidewalk throughout the whole stretch of Longview all the way out to Route 4. Okay? So the whole thing along Longview is improved for biking and walking. And then you cross over Route 4 and you have Cloverdale all the way back to Ken Road. That's also initial early recommendations from our consultant show that they think that's the right first phase to do, to connect that whole area and allow folks from the side streets to filter on to a better improved bike walking path. And then they can filter east towards Longview and then work their way over from Longview over to Kemper Road. And all that should be improved and get us over to the mall. Yeah. So that's kind of like the general idea right now. We do know that Northland Boulevard is going to likely be the first phase of a chunk of road that's going to have a full-blown shared use path, bike path, built into it. So it is, it was 85% designed. The city's been working on it with their engineers for the past couple of years, hoping to go out to bid in 2024, 25, I think, for construction for totally rebuilding Northland Boulevard. And then all this stuff happened in the last year and a half. So now they're kind of having to tweak and do a little bit of redesign to work in a 8 to 12 foot wide shared use path along as much of Northland Boulevard as they can fit it to get from Kemper Road towards Forest Park and Route 4. So that could very well be a cut through to get to Route 4 and then head south from there. So we know that's going to be the first piece. We know we have existing sidewalks along Kemper Road that really can connect us to most of the existing residential areas. So right now it seems to make sense to try to expand on those and improve those as far as the first phase to connect over to the middle of town, in the middle of what we hope is going to be all the new exciting stuff at Artisan Village.
So the Northland phase would go live where the new library will be and post office would include that.
That's in Forest Park. We will stop at, our road improvement will stop at our border. So if Forest Park wants to pick that up, and we'll be discussing with them, once we actually have plans, we'll be sharing those plans with them so they know what we're planning to do. But that's gonna be on them to pick that up. And as we get outside of our borders, it's gonna be on, and we're gonna be talking to Great Parks of Hamilton County. They're a big entity that has funded a lot of regional bike paths in the area. They're the ones that are funding that Whitney Woods to Glenwood Gardens connector. That's a Great Parks of Hamilton County project. So they got funding through this regional planning organization that gets access to federal money, and they're the ones that are doing it. And it's going through multiple communities. So that's who we're going to be partnering with to make sure that they understand where we're going and where it can go from there to connect to other parts of the system. Any other questions?
I think the plan calls for like 17 restaurants on the site, and the city will be filing papers with the state to have that area declared an entertainment zone, and that will allow the state then to issue 15 liquor permits for that site. So it'll be a great enticement for the developers to go out and recruit restaurant tours to come in, because they're automatically, well, not automatically, but there's going to be an ample supply of liquor permits, and that's what the restaurant always wants. If you don't have a liquor permit, forget it, you're going down the pipe. So we're looking forward to that. I'd like to amplify one of the answers about the population. I believe somebody asked the grocery store, the population. Our population right now is about 11,000 people. With the units that you heard about today, with the 3 developments going on, that should drive Springdale's population up to around 17,000. And if that were the case today, we would be probably the 3rd largest community in Hamilton County. Cincinnati, Norwood, Springdale. Okay, now that's right neck and neck with Forest Park and I think there's another one, I'm not sure. But anyway, we would possibly be the 3rd or 4th largest community in Hamilton County. So that's what we have to look forward to. Okay, well listen, we just want to thank all of you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. And this guy did a great job. So anyway, thank you very much for the invitation, and we look forward to coming back whenever you want us.